Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining on behalf of Sage and Acrobatiq. We're glad to have you on our webinar. You are joining today, and our topic is Improve Teaching and Learning Outcomes with Sage Educational Research Methods online course. My name is Tara Schultz, and I'm a marketing manager at Sage Publications, and I'm moderating today's webinar. Before we get started with our speakers, I just want to do a few housekeeping agenda items that we need to take care of. First, just let you know that we are going to mute everyone's line, but don't worry, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. But feel free at any time to use the question panel to ask questions, and if we can't answer them live, we will, but if not, we will definitely get to them at the end of the presentation today. If you want to, feel free to use the chat on the left-hand side of your screen. If you use the click-down arrows, you'll see that a panel opens where you can ask a question. And just one more piece about making sure that we kind of keep the background noise to a minimum. Please be sure that you've chosen within the audio portion, the audio that corresponds to what you're using. So if you're joining us and you're using your computer or headset, please be sure you've clicked the Use Mic or Speakers. If you've called in your phone, please be sure you're using the telephone option. That will help us keep background noise to a minimum. And also know if you have colleagues who are not able to join today but would like to hear the webinar, we will also be sending this to you via email so that you can go back and listen to yourself or share with other people. So you should get that in the next 24 hours. All right, well, let's jump in. Let me introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Howard Lurie. He's been involved in the development and the deployment of innovative online educational products since the late 1990s. His efforts have included designing and teaching online and hybrid courses, global forums, and managing digital content repositories for startup companies, K-20 institutions, foundations, and educational nonprofits. These experiences leverage a 15-year teaching career, during which Howard taught history and digital humanities at the secondary school level, community colleges, and in graduate level teacher development programs. As both a teacher and an education tech innovator, Howard has advocated for data-driven, pioneering uses of online digital media to accelerate teaching and learning for both higher ed institutions and K-12 systems. Diane McDaniel is the Director of College Editorial at Sage Publications. Diane earned her BA in English from the University of California, Los Angeles, and her PhD in English from the University of Southern California. While pursuing her doctoral degree, Diane was an assistant lecturer for freshman composition courses, as well as a mentor for the program that prepared new graduate students to teach college writing courses. Diane has worked in college publishing since 1995, starting in sales before becoming an acquisitions editor. In her capacity as editor of Sage's education list, she worked closely with the author of the book on which the Educational Research Methods course is based. We are very pleased to be joined by Dr. Marie Norman. She is co-author of the book, How Learning Works, 7 Research-Based Principles for Smart Teaching, which distills learning research into practical strategies for classroom teaching. She has taught anthropology for over 20 years at the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University, and served for many years as the Associate Director of the Eberly Center for Teaching Excellence at CMU. Dr. Norm is currently the Senior Director of Educational Excellence at Acatar, a CMU-based company with an innovative platform and process for helping faculty develop and deliver high-quality online courses. I'll also just note that we have a few behind-the-scenes people who are running the show for us, and we'll thank Sharon Schwartzmiller and Hal Turner from Acrobatiq. We're glad they're joining us as well, and just in case we need technical support or we hit a user error, we thank you, Sharon and Hal. So our agenda today, to get us rolling, Diane is going to cover the challenges in teaching educational research methods and how our new product addresses these challenges. Howard is going to dive in and show us examples from the Educational Research Methods course, and Marie will show us how to make the most of the learning dashboard. And now we'll turn it over to Diane.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, everybody. So first, let's just talk about this course, Educational Research Methods. This course has many challenges for both students and instructors. On the student side, the main challenge is that they hear the word research, they hear the word statistics, and their response for the most part is fear. Many things that they are fearful of, strange terminology, terms that they're unfamiliar with and struggle to understand what they mean, and that gives them concern about understanding the course. Just the idea of statistics strikes fear in many people's hearts. And then they want to know what's the relevance of this course? Why are they taking it? And so instructors face kind of the flip side to many of those challenges. In terms of teaching this course, they're really looking for a way to condense this complicated content into some manageable chunks that will help their students understand. They need to explain these keywords and the definitions so that students understand the core concepts and content of the course. And then they're really looking for examples to illustrate the content and to create relevancy for the students so they understand why they need to take this course and do well in it. And so we feel that the solutions to these challenges really lie in this educational research methods course and the partnership of SAGE with Acrobatiq. SAGE is the leading social science research methods book publisher in the world, and we've published over 1,200 research methods titles, and we currently publish 50 to 60 titles in research methods per year. Our company has been at the forefront of developing new approaches in methods, evaluation, qualitative methods, mixed methods. And then Acrobatiq, our partner, is a learning optimization company backed by Carnegie Mellon University. And Acrobatiq builds on CMU's historic strengths in cognitive and learning science, human-centered experience design, and software engineering. So how did we build this course? We wanted to start with the best existing content, and so we turned to this book, Educational Research by Burke Johnson and Larry Christensen, which is currently in its 5th edition with SAGE Publications. This is a comprehensive and friendly introduction. It covers qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, and action research, and it's full of abundant examples. And so it really was great content for us to start with in building the course. And then here's the course that we, in our partnership, developed together, Educational Research Methods. This course is developed specifically to help students learn to become critical consumers of educational research within an online environment. And so this course represents merged and adapted core text and ancillary content from the originating book, as well as new media elements, practice activities, and assessment. So much of the content is picked up verbatim from the source text. Some content was reorganized for online presentation, on-screen reading, as well as integrated practice and assessment, and some of the content has been condensed for online presentation. So how does educational research methods address these learning challenges that we talked about? The first thing is that the course really acknowledges that online learning is different than in-person learning, and that the online environment requires specific learning strategies. One thing that the book does very explicitly is to acknowledge that the online course gives students a lot of flexibility in terms of their learning. The flip side of that is that students have a real responsibility for their own learning. Their responsibility is greater than when they're sitting in a classroom and the content is really being pushed out to them. And the second thing is that it introduces this idea of metacognition, which is an awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. One way that people talk about metacognition is knowing about knowing. So our next slide will show an example of how metacognition is addressed in the text. So this slide here is showing students how they need to be aware of and deliberate about their own learning. It asks them to take a greater share of responsibility for their own learning. So you can see in this slide, it talks about the 5 skills of metacognition and talks about how that's going to be cycled through in the course over and over. And so it gives them these aspects of metacognition that they need to assess the task, evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, plan an approach, apply strategies, and monitor their performance. And then they need to reflect and adjust as needed. And our next slide here just shows an example from the course to where students are asked to, again, use this metacognition to reflect on what it is that they're learning. So before they can continue on, they need to evaluate and rate their understanding of the learning objections covered in the section. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that are unique to the course. This book, as I said, was developed to address the challenges with teaching the course, and Acrobatiq course enhances the source text solutions to further meet the challenge. The course was developed in strict adherence to Acrobatiq's science-based method of course development. It has a detailed mapping to carefully developed learning objectives. The core content is fully aligned with learning objectives, instruction, practice, and assessment, and graded quizzes are integrated throughout. And so each unit in the course, you can see there are 14 units covering the main topics, have features designed to support students as independent learners. So at the top of this grid on the left-hand side, you'll see a graphic, and that is what is called the big picture. So this big picture opens each unit. As I mentioned, there are 14 units covering all of the major topics. Within those 14 units, there are 40 learning modules, and then there are 15 case examples. So just in here, you can see how some of those challenges that I illustrated at the beginning of my talk about condensing the content into manageable chunks is part of the design of this course. And then through the case study activities, you can see how it's illustrating content and creating relevancy. So next, underneath the big picture slide, at the bottom left, you see an example of what are the video walkthroughs of key concepts. So there are 5 of these throughout the course. Then at the right top, you see an example of learn by doing. So here, this is one of those types of activities that gives students a chance to practice the concept being learned with hints and feedback provided. And then there are assessments throughout. And so through taking these short assessments, which are computer graded, students and instructors see how well the student has understood the material. So at this point, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Howard Lurie, who will walk you through the actual course so you can get a better sense of it.
Great, thanks, Diane. So great to be on this call, this webinar today. I'm joining everyone from where I sit here in Boston, Massachusetts, and want to take a few minutes and talk about how Acrobatiq develops these courses, where we come from, and sort of our product lineage, and then we'll take a dive, walk through the actual course itself. So when we sit down with companies like Sage, and we're thrilled to work with Sage, by the way, who's just a leader in educational research methods. It's a great opportunity, I think, for your students and your institutions in this partnership. We really think about aligning the learning outcomes, asking faculty and having faculty work with us to figure out what should students know how to do and be able to do at the end of a course. In effect, it's sort of working backwards process. When we think about learning outcomes, we also iteratively tie that into the types of instructional content that we want to build, the types of activities we want to build into the courseware itself, and the types of activities in the assessments. And we do this in a sort of circular fashion because we find this is the best way to create an overall coherence to the course itself. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So as we do that, and we look at this particular objective, identifying the purpose of quantitative research, Our approach is to take the objectives, the sort of meta competencies within a course such as this, and break those into specific objectives and learning goals, and further break those into the components you see at the bottom of the slide. These are the actual things that students do in the course itself. It's very important, again, to create that type of coherence, but it also creates a flow of the data, the learning analytic data, which really sits at the heart of how we approach this type of learning. Let's go to the next slide. And as we think about this, Acrobatiq realizes we have to do this in partnership with companies such as Sage and several other publishers, and also in partnership with institutions, because we think that obviously the content that publishers and institutions bring to this type of a project can be driven by the type of courseware that we build. That's what we know how to do, and that's based upon where we've come from. We share, obviously, a lot of goals and approaches to taking this type of courseware, and we think for your institutions, it will enable the kinds of instructional interventions that we think you can enact and have expertise at. You know your students, you know the environments in which you work better than all of us. And then at the end of the day, because it's built in a digital environment, and I think this is one of the kind of the coolest things about how this next generation courseware is developing, we can actually tune the courseware based upon how students and institutions use the content. And so that's we built into every type of instance of our courseware a subsequent sort of calibration and tuning of what went well and what didn't go well. And that's I think a significant advance in the delivery of this type of content. Let's look through, for example, how we build a particular section of this course. Again, we start with competencies. Let's click through some of these here. Go ahead. And we break those down to specific learning goals, broke those learning goals into these learning objectives, and ultimately, if we go to the next click through, we end up in skills. And so this becomes what we call in our course a skill map. The skill map is really the architecture of how these courses work, or how this particular course and all the particular courses that Acrobatiq builds works. It's important to note that the flow of coherence goes from the competencies down to goals, but as we get into the course, I'm going to show you in a second, the data flows upwards from the activities through the skills to the objectives and provides a type of personalized environment for students. Let's go to the next slide. And I think what I'm going to do at this point is you can pass me the controls. I'm going to take a few minutes and dive into the course itself. So whoever has the controls over there in World Acrobatiq headquarters in Pittsburgh, then we will pass them over to me. Hang on one second, and let me just bring over to my right screen here. And what you should be seeing is the Educational Research Methods course homepage. I hope you all see that. One of our core competencies in building these courses is thinking about design. And so it's a very clean and very simple look. It's a very easy navigation system. That's not just because we like how it looks. It's based upon years of research that we've done into things like what's called cognitive noise. You know, when students come into an online environment and they can't figure out what to do first, it actually creates a drag on their ability to understand new content. So our approach to this is really informed by that type of research. Let's go into one of our sections here. I'll just fly through. All of our courseware, as I said before, is very, very easy to use and very simple to use, with very simple navigation. I'm just going to go forward to one page, and you can see right off the top, this is a module 5 on quantitative research. Right at the top, we drop in that learning objective. If you remember that scaffold sort of fish scale that we showed a minute or two earlier, that's one of these high-level learning objectives. I want to tell the student, this is what you're going to be working on this particular page. And it's a very simple sort of exposition of some content, similar to what you might see. But then very, very quickly, we get into what we call these learning by doings, and some of these have been indicated from some of my prior work. But what we give students a chance to do is actually test their own assumptions and knowledge right away. And every mouse click and every action through that is giving a data feed into the learning engine itself. And we have roughly about 25, 26 different question types that we modify and sequence in a cadence through the particular course. I'm going to show you, jump to one more page, just go forward for a few, and I want to show you some examples of further of what this looks like. So if we go over to page 27, the one more over to page 27, further into this. Again, we reiterate our objectives, some exposition of the content. Here is a simple, did I get this? And when I click through, and this is, again, the hallmark, I think, of what we've done, we're using a targeted feedback approach. So the question of employment status and study, comparing working and non-working college students, is that a constant or a variable? And I indicated it's a constant. Now, right away, I'm told as a learner, that's incorrect, and it's telling me, why did I miss that? What was the piece of information that I didn't get correct? Again, I missed that one, and then if I were to modify and give the correct response, if I knew this material the way I should, I would get the correct response and a reinforcement of why that's correct. Numbers of different types of question types. I'm scrolling down a little bit further here so you can see we institute a very simple sort of drag and drop modality where students are comparing quantitative versus categorical variables, and it's a simple way for them to just drop something in to see that they answered it correctly. The green is indicating, again, that I've got that right. This is a quick little fly-through for a course that has literally hundreds and hundreds of these opportunities for students to both test their knowledge, but every time they're doing that, they're getting, they're feeding that data stream and feeding the analytics engine that Marie is now going to talk about. So I'm going to give control back over to Sharon, who will then have Marie continue with the balance part of the presentation. Thanks very much. Look forward to your questions at the end of this.
Okay, while Sharon pulls that up, I just want to thank you all for coming out today, and I wanted to thank Acrobatiq and Sage for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I know, well, what I'd like to talk about is the value I see of Acrobatiq's analytics platform, its dashboard for teachers. So I've taught for many years, and I'm imagining that a number of you are also teachers. So I wanted to just start off with a couple scenarios that I've run into in my teaching and that might sound familiar to you. So I wonder if these are things you've run into yourself. So in the first scenario, you've planned a really excellent class. You've got a good, juicy discussion planned. You've got activities in mind, but the success of all of that depends on whether students are prepared, whether they've done the work and are coming to class ready to participate, and you're not going to find that out until you're actually in class. Wouldn't it be nice to know whether they actually have done that and are ready to hit the ground running? A second scenario, your students seem kind of checked out. They're a little bit out of it, and you're not sure why. And it's possible that you're moving too fast through the content, but it's also equally possible that you're moving too slowly. And you don't have any really good way of assessing which it is, what's the case. In a third scenario, a student approaches you after class and says that he's really been struggling to understand the work and he needs an extension. Now, wouldn't it be nice to know whether that student has in fact given it a good faith effort, whether the student has done his part, or whether he's kind of taking advantage of you by asking for the extension. Those three scenarios describe situations which I've run into where I really wanted more information about what my students were doing and what they were understanding. And Acrobatiq's dashboard I see as providing a really excellent window into students' minds and students' actions that can provide really fine-grained insights into what they're doing and what they're getting, and exactly what sorts of learning goals they have and haven't accomplished, what activities they have and haven't done. So that you can really figure out who's who among your students and how you can help them individually, and also how you can improve your own teaching by recognizing things that they do and don't understand. So I wanted to talk just a bit about how I might use Acrobatiq's dashboard in preparing for class and during class and also kind of between classes. So one of the things I think I would do as a teacher, and to my knowledge there is not an anthropology class yet, so I'm just waiting for Acrobatiq to provide me with one, but one thing I would do is review the dashboard while I was planning for class. And I would use it and the queries that are here on the right hand on your screen, the questions that are posed, to really identify what it is that I want to know about my students, and then navigate to the data representations that will tell me what I want to know. And you'll notice these are very clean, very easy to understand representations of the data. So I would take a look at this first, and I would first of all really try to figure out where students are struggling. So what don't they understand? What do they need additional help with? And also, what do they clearly understand that maybe we can move through faster? And I would really spend time before class developing activities that target those areas where students seem to be struggling. So I would come up with more examples or activities or practice problems that really give them more practice and more feedback in those areas, more illustrations, for example. Also before class, I would just see among my students who is engaging with the material and who isn't. And of those people who are engaging with it, who's understanding and who isn't. And I would find that useful information when I go into class. So if I think about how I would use that then during class, one thing I would do is use what I learn about students' engagement with the content to determine how I'd approach them. So for example, if I have a whole lot of students who aren't doing the work outside of class, I might give a pop quiz or something like that to hold their feet to the fire, or I might ask some pointed questions that create some accountability and show students that they have a responsibility. I might also call on those students who I know have mastered the material so that I could allow them to demonstrate their knowledge. Or I might even decide to call on a student who I know hasn't done the work to make them squirm a little bit. And again, to kind of reinforce the idea that they have a responsibility outside of class to come prepared. I might also really think about those students who are not prepared, or students who are doing the work and don't understand, and be sure not to put them on the spot in class. I might also use that information to form groups, so I might pair a student who's struggling with a student who gets it, or even maybe group students who have engaged with the material together so that the ones who haven't done the work aren't dragging down the ones who have. And then I would also really think about what I learned from the dashboard if students are asking for some kind of special treatment, like an extension, to get a sense of whether they're doing their part. And then periodically over the course of the semester, I would look for patterns in the data. So I would look to see if a particular group of people, a group of students is struggling, maybe students from one major or another, and try to figure out whether they're missing some critical prior knowledge that I could help them gain. I'd see if everybody's doing well. If everybody's doing extremely well, then maybe I'd pick up the pace. Or if everyone seems to be doing poorly, maybe I would try to slow it down and make sure I'm not missing anything. I'd also probably reach out to students who are struggling or students who are disengaged to find out what's going on. And for those students who seem to be sailing effortlessly through all this material, I'd look for other ways to challenge them. So maybe more complex problems or cases or things along those lines. So Sharon, if you want to go to the next slide. So overall, I see a number of benefits to using this kind of analytics dashboard for teaching. For one thing, it allows you to be very responsive to your students, to really know in real time, before it's too late, how they're doing and what they're understanding, and then to provide focused instruction to really pinpoint those things where they need the extra help and put my energy and their energy there. And to provide practice in those areas where students seem to need it most. And also use the dashboard to really help students improve their metacognitive skills, help them to think about their own learning and to be able to identify those areas where they need additional help. This dashboard also provides opportunities for differentiated instruction, so you can, depending on the size of your class, direct, particular kinds of instruction to the students who need it, or more challenging problems to the students who are doing well, and to provide early intervention. So rather than wait for your early course evaluations or your midterm to find out how students are doing and whether they're understanding, you can find out immediately and address it in the very next class. So I see these things as being very powerful tools in the hands of teachers, and really think this has tremendous potential. So with that, I will turn the reins back to Tara, who I think will invite some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. All right, let's kick off some questions. Feel free, again, to use the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen if you want to add some questions in there. And we do have some questions already coming through. So our first question, can you run the software on my LMS? Can this Acrobatiq Sage Educational Research Methods run in my learning management system? That's a good question.
I think I'll try and respond. Yes, we have a very high degree of interoperable operations with all the main learning management systems, Canvas and structures, obviously Blackboard, D2L, custom LMS, and one of the things we're very careful to note is that we don't think of ourselves as a replacement for a institutional learning management system, but rather a component that could operate within that learning management system and interoperable through a number of different systems. So yes, and we're happy to answer more specific questions with institutions about how to do that.
And our next question is, are all assessments multiple choice?
No, there are open response opportunities. We have integrations with human-developed rubrics as well. There are some graphic type of assessment questions, and many of the assessments too, as we get further into the course, are actually scenario-based, based upon actually a case study of a particular educational research challenge. The ones we looked at very quickly are the multiple choice, but we have about 24, 25 different question types, and we rely upon those, the variety of those, I think, to build the learning estimate that Marie was talking about.
Someone has a question about the cost of the product, and I'm happy to answer that. The product by itself to students, the list price is $95. If you wanted to use it with the Johnson book, you could do that, and we could put the bundle together for you, and then that is to the students, list price $140. This is a product that you do not need a textbook to accompany. It is, self-contained, self-sufficient. You're going to have everything you need there. We have had professors, instructors say that they would like a student to have a reference of the book. And so the bundle with the Johnson Christensen book is kind of a nice way to accompany that, and that students can refer back to. Let's say a couple years down the road they do an education research project that they would want to reference. So that would become the solution for that. All right, what schools are using educational research methods or Acrobatiq products?
I can weigh in on the Acrobatiq products in general, and we can certainly provide a targeted list of partners per request, but we have a wide range. I mean, there are a fair number of large statewide systems, University of Vermont, University of Kansas, for example, and then some smaller institutions, such as places such as Marist College, who's really interested in early action, early intervention strategies. It's a pretty wide range. I think to date we have around 30, 35 institutions who are using some form of the courseware, and then we have a number of different broader partnerships with traditional 2- and 4-year schools, as well as new competency-based schools as well. I'm happy to provide those upon request.
Here's another good question. Can I use this online content for my face-to-face class? And if yes, how? I'm looking for suggestions for that.
Well, I think it's a great question. We say, I mean, as Marie was explaining before, and I think that was an excellent overview of how you might use the dashboard and the tools. You know, we think it's a range from both blended face-to-face environments, so you're using the courseware as outside class assignments, to something that could be done in a lab environment. There are probably some self-paced versions that we could get into some customization. I think, by and large, we think it's best used, and to date has been best used in a blended or hybrid environment where the instructor is still obviously meeting with students, giving them some case studies to work on, and using the courseware as in effect, a basal a set of assignments. What Marie's point around the dashboard, I think, is essential, because it gives, we have found, and this is what we have learned in our conversations with faculty and instructional support staff, is it gives them a lens with which they can, precisely target the kind of interventions they think are going to help students early. That's what the research shows, and it's a fairly a precise way to do that. So I would think mostly in a blended hybrid environment.
Another question, is there a proposal as a final product students must submit?
I think we have a variety of different summative assessments. It's possible to add that type of sort of capstone projects. The courseware is very flexible in terms of what instructors might do, and I think to some degree that's an instructional question that we'd invite faculty to consider. Like there are, as I said, there are summative assessments that are based in sort of scenarios, but I think if you're looking for a full capstone, it's something we could either develop or certainly integrate into the capture, the learning estimate, and the data systems that we have.
Is it possible to preview the entire course? And in just a second, or Sharon can put in the notes where the website URL that you can go to preview the course, and we're happy maybe to send out, when we send out the recorded presentation, that URL as well, so that you can go on and request your own course to take a look at. Would evaluation be covered as research method?
I don't know if Diane or Marie or Jess have any additional info on the particular scope and sequence on evaluation. I think I would need to know more about what types of evaluation the questioner is looking for.
And Diane, I'll let her think about if she wants to respond, but I will move on to the next question. Are there forthcoming plans to create additional research courses, perhaps intro to qualitative research methods? Probably, and maybe another question for Diane as well.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what that question was? I didn't really understand it.
Are there forthcoming plans to create additional courses, so perhaps a course in intro to qualitative research methods?
We're considering many different courses. We don't have information to share at this time about courses that we're planning on that are related to research methods. And just to go back to evaluation, I mean, I'm just looking at the table of contents that Howard showed, and there is a unit on evaluating research studies. But in terms of a major section on evaluation as a research method, it's touched on in the course, but it's not given heavy-duty coverage.
And Diane, while you're looking at the table of contents, maybe you could also speak to another question here. How much coverage of qualitative research is there? Is there much of an emphasis on narrative, ethnography, phenomenology, so anything that's geared towards qualitative?
So there isn't a unit specifically on qualitative. As I mentioned, though, in terms of the source material that we used for this book, one of the hallmarks of the Johnson and Christensen text is really its balanced approach. So as I mentioned, it covers quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods, and action research. And so the unit structure of the course itself doesn't break that out as a specific unit, but it talks about different, all those different methods within the course.
All right, we have lots of questions coming in, so we're going to try to keep going for a few more minutes, and anything that we don't get to answer, we will try to answer for you via email. What is the time frame of the course? Is it going to be best with a 1 semester or a 2-semester course?
I think it's typically a one. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Howard.
I mean, my sense is it's typically a 1-semester course, but I think it's, again, somewhat dependent upon the kind of instructional scope and sequence that a faculty or institution wants to follow. So I think it's highly flexible.
And as another question, kind of in the same arena, can we, as a professor, can you choose certain chapters that you want to cover and maybe hide other chapters so that you don't have to cover the entire courseware?
There is the ability to hide certain parts of the content, and we're going to be continuing to kind of refine that capability. The key thing there is that as we again, I don't want to get too abstract about how this works, but all of the content is in effect connected to the data model, the analytics model. So as we withhold certain content from students, it does have an effect on the estimations of learning for all the students. It's not impossible to work through that. But we have the ability to customize and hide certain parts of things. It would be something that we'd want to, obviously directly engage with faculty to figure out what's the best optimal way to pursue that. So it's possible. It has some dependencies that we want to make sure everyone's aware of.
I'm getting a lot of various questions on using this online versus face-to-face versus blended. So perhaps we can speak one more time to kind of the different avenues that you could go.
I'll take a stab. I don't know if my SAGE colleagues who are more rooted in the field will want to weigh in. I was trained as an historian and taught in that field and did, obviously had some experience in educational research methods, but not as a faculty person in library science or that area. I think that you could use it any of those modalities. I think I would tend to skew towards a blended environment because I think you can get students to engage. It's a highly engaging experience. I think that data can then be very informative for faculty. It could be done in a completely face-to-face environment and assigned as I guess in effect assigned as homework. I think quite honestly, I think the hardest implementation might be completely online, because I think you still need some type of intervention of faculty, some contact. At the end of the day, for us, this is still about the interactions of faculty with students and the relationships of students to the content. So it's possible, and we would welcome that. I think it's would defer back to the institution. I don't know if my comrades at SAGE want to weigh in on that, because it's a really critical question.
Yeah, I would say that most courses that I've seen in traditional universities are where there's a significant online component are more blended classes. And it might be that the class doesn't meet every week. Perhaps it meets face-to-face once a month. But certainly I think the course could be used in an entirely online environment as well, with supports through learning management system and that sort of thing that Howard talked about at the beginning. So I think it really, has to do with the instructor and what his or her goals are and the environment in which he or she teaches. So I think it is, as Howard said, very flexible in terms of being able to use it in a variety of different ways.
All right, I have one last quick question, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I do want to answer this one or have someone at Acrobatiq talk about any special hardware requirements, any software requirements to deliver this course online.
An internet connection. I think that's really it. I mean, we've one of the things that we did in migrating from the Open Learning Initiative that had been at Carnegie Mellon is we've re-engineered the entire platform, so it's optimized for mobile and tablet use. It's accessible, meeting Section 508C compatibility requirements. So it's a very well-developed, robust environment. So, and we build it to test out on all different kinds of browsers, platforms, and things like that. So no, it doesn't really require any special hardware except an internet connection.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate it, and I think we got all the questions, and we'll look through and be sure if there's something that we missed that we get back to you. And please, as you leave, you'll see some questions about the webinar, and that way you can provide us feedback, and we can make any improvements if we do another session. I want to thank you for attending today's webinar, Improved Teaching and Learning Outcomes with SAGE Educational Research Methods Online. And just as a reminder, you will be getting a link to this recorded session, so keep an eye on your inbox. And again, thank you, Howard, Diane, Marie. We really appreciate everyone who joined today, taking that time out on your day. And thanks to Hal and Sharon behind the scenes. We appreciate it. Have a great day.